The day starts out with a text from Chris Johnson, who organizes the high stakes games in Bobby's room. He lets me know that there's a seat open in the 2550. I changed some things around in order to play in it and head to the strip. Today will be my 4th time firing in the nosebleeds over the last few weeks. So far, I ended a session almost dead even. I won about $13,000 in the second session, then I lost about $13,000 in the last one. It'd be nice to have a solid win today after losing 5 figures in the previous session. Also, this is the last time that I'll be playing before my son's scheduled to be born in 3 days. I'd like to make it count. I buy in for $15,000, even though this game has a $20,000 cap. Typically straddles aren't allowed, so 300 big blinds is plenty. There are several familiar faces at the table, including Andrew Nemi and the opponent who stacked me the last time I played 2550 when he called my 3-bet with King 9 suited and I triple barrel bluffed with Ace Queen. We still need to get revenge against him. The session begins at 10:02 a.m. and I'm on time to see the first card dealt. Early on, we pick up 9-8 suited in middle position. Under the gun raises to 200. He's the opponent who stacked me in the previous session. Andrew's on our right. He calls. I call to get in the mix. The button calls. We're going 4 ways to the flop. It comes Queen 10 deuce rainbow. We've got a gutter and a backdoor flush draw. The initial preflop raiser bets 400. It's too much for Andrew. He folds. There are a lot of cards that can help us out on the turn, although the jack is a bit of a dirty one because if we hit it, we have to be concerned that we could be up against Ace King for Broadway. Still, we need to see at least one more. I call. The button is considering his options. I'd prefer him to fold so that we can play heads up in position. We get what we want. He folds. There are only 2 of us left. The turn is the 9 of hearts. We make third pair, but King Jack gets there. And now if we hit a jack, our straight won't be hidden with 4 to the straight on board. Plus, any combo containing a king would have us beat. Under the gun slows down and checks. Maybe the opponent has Ace King or another hand that isn't all that strong. I bet 1200 sort of as a bluff because I didn't learn my lesson the previous time about bluffing this particular individual. The opponent calls. No big surprise there. He clearly doesn't like to fold against me. Someday that strategy might come back to haunt him, but as long as I keep not making strong hands against him, it's going to work out pretty well. The river's the 6 of diamonds. It's mostly a blank. The opponent checks. My credit with him is at an all-time low because he's caught me bluffing multiple times, even though I'd like to blast away because we've got removal to some straights and some 2-pair combos. I check back knowing there's a higher than normal chance that we'll get called. It's a good thing I gave up because the opponent has King-Queen offsuit. Last time he called a shove for over 8,000 with a pair of kings. I would have made it a lot less this time, and I would have lost. Revenge will have to wait a little longer. On paper, he's not the toughest opponent at the table, but I can't seem to beat him lately. Sometimes that just happens with certain individuals. We couldn't win with 9-8 of clubs. Now we're going to try with a slightly worse hand of the same suit. We've got 9-7 3 hands later in the big blind. The button is the opponent that we'd like to get some of our money back from. He raises to 200. Our hand has quite a bit of playability. We're getting a discount and closing the action. I call for 150 more. We're heads up out of position. The flop comes 8-7-7 rainbow. Not only do we flop trips, we've got a backdoor straight flush draw. I check to set the trap. There's some big game in the area that might just fall for it. The button bets 400. The question is, do we make our move now or do we wait? I call to not tip our hand too early. The turn is the 6 of diamonds. Now, we need to potentially start pushing the betting ourselves. If we check, there's a high probability that the button checks back after getting resistance from us on the flop and seeing another card come out that connects with the board. We can't allow that to happen. I mentioned before that my image against the opponent isn't super solid after him catching me bluff multiple times. This bad image actually helps us get paid when we've got strong hands. I make over a pot size bet of 1300. We should still be able to get paid by all overpairs, hands containing an 8, and maybe even by worse combos if the opponent just doesn't believe that we have anything better than the pair on the board. The button calls. It feels like he has something with value, but we haven't beat. The river is the king of clubs. It should mostly be a blank after all the action on the flop and turn, unless the opponent has a suited king that connected with the flop or turn. Hopefully he doesn't have pocket kings. I can't worry too much about it. With our image being bad and the opponent's inability to fold against us, I'm not going to miss an opportunity to go for max value. I bet 3,500 to smash this one over the wall. If we run into a straight or a full house, it's going to hurt badly. Since the opponent doesn't call immediately, we can rule out being up against a straight. It doesn't appear that the button is interested in raising either. The more time he takes, the more likely we are to have him beat. The opponent doesn't believe that we've got trips. He calls. we show that we actually have it as we slide our cards towards the middle for everyone to see. The opponent reveals he has 7 deuce offsuit, but the camera doesn't feel like focusing correctly right now. The 7 deuce game is on, so the button would have gotten an extra $200 from each player at the table if he won the hand, but his kicker doesn't play, and ours does. We somewhat cooler the button after we both flop trips. I don't feel bad though. We get a lot of value. Still, the opponent has another 10,000 or more of our money that I'm going to be coming for. This is only the beginning. Here we pick up Los Higgity's middle position. Under the gun raises to 200. It's our boy, the one who needs to be punished. His range should be narrow after raising when he's first to act pre-flop. We can mix in 3-betting or calling. I call. The big blind also calls. We're going 3 ways to the flop in position. It comes Jack 8 deuce rainbow. I've seen the Grand Canyon, Niagara Falls, and a handful of other beautiful sights, but none of those made me as happy as I am right now looking at the Jack high flop against our nemesis. The big blind checks. Under the gun bets 500. Other than some straight draws, there's nothing to be too concerned about. The opponent likely has nothing or very little. I know that he likes to c-bet a lot with air, and I want to keep those hands bluffing into us while we've got the nuts. I call. The big blind folds. It's down to heads up. The turn is a 7 of spades. It's not the best card, but none are all that bad. Under the gun slows down and checks, making me more suspicious that he has nothing or very little. In the past, when I've shown weakness, this particular opponent has pounced on it with a bet. Sometimes he's shown up with strong hands, and sometimes I've seen him bluff big. I put in a very deceitful check back on a board that now has several draws. If I was watching this from the sidelines, I wouldn't suspect that we even had better than top pair. The check back leaves the door wide open for the opponent to fire big on the river, regardless of what he has. Sure, some of the time he'll get there on us if he has a hand like Queen 10 or 2 spades, but he might have continued firing on the turn with a few of those combos, so I'm not all that worried about giving him a free card. The river is the ace of clubs, which is the card that I'm happiest to see because there's a good chance that the opponent now has top pair given how this has been played. He's at least going to rep it. Under the gun bets 1200. Our plan has come to fruition. We've got the 3rd nuts in a juicy spot, and we're going to be putting in a raise that makes almost no sense. We're getting jiggy with it. I raised to 4,500. I went with a really large size for a few reasons. One is that the opponent has shown a propensity to call me light in the previous hands, and the second is because the line we've taken is so suspect. Because of that, we're even more likely to get called. What can we possibly have that wasn't good enough to bet on the turn, but now is so strong that we can raise on the river? We're basically representing hands like ace-jack or maybe 10-9 of spades, but even with the straight, I'd likely still bet the turn with hopes that the opponent had top pair or an overpair. Under the gun knows that this is a bizarre situation, and he's confused about how to proceed.
What are you doing to me, Brad?
Trying to get all my money back from last time.
Honestly, I probably shouldn't have said anything. Usually, I don't talk at all in the middle of hands, and especially not when the opponent is contemplating a big decision, but I couldn't help myself. I figure Under the gun probably doesn't actually have much, and after he asked me that question, it seems likely that he's going to fold. Perhaps I've swayed him even more to that side of the fence though. Under the gun folds, we win it. At least our check on the turn might have helped us earn an extra 1,200.
Yeah.
Over an hour and a half goes by before we pick up 7 deuce suited in the cutoff. We've got an opportunity to win some bonus money from everyone at the table. Under the gun raises to 125. I like to mix in calling with this hand and 3-betting with it. In this instance, I 3-bet to 400 to play aggressively from the start. Under the gun has a hand that he wants to see a flop with. He calls for 275 more. We're heads up in position against a good pro. The flop comes ace-ace queen with 2 diamonds. It's interesting because it'll crush our 3-bet range. We'll have trips, flopped full houses, and even quads. The opponent will have a lot of those hands in his range as well though. Under the gun checks. I'm going to play this as if we have an absolute monster. I check back. Similar to when I checked back the set of jacks previously, we're getting into the second layer of deception with plans to rep a really strong hand on a future street. The opponent is smart enough to know that if I smash the flop, I might wait until the turn to bet anyway. The turn is the 3 of clubs, it's a blank. Under the gun puts out a probe bet of 250. If I truly had something close to the nuts, I wouldn't make a move just yet. I call, floating with 7 high and no draw in order to set up a big bluff attempt on the river. The dealer puts out the 6 of spades, it's another blank. Under the gun may start suspecting that we've got what we're pretending to have. He checks. It's still possible that he actually could have queens, ace queen, or trip aces, but there are 7 players at the table who have to pay us 200 each if we can get a bluff through. Plus, we'll get a couple thousand in the middle if we're successful, so the pot odds we're getting on a bluff are phenomenal. I announce a bet of 900 as I put a yellow 1K chip out there. The opponent clearly isn't too thrilled to see us bet. He takes a long look at his cards. They're just not quite good enough to call with. The opponent folds. We immediately flip over the 7 deuce to get an extra 200 from each player at the table. We took an elaborate road to victory in a fun situation. Everything goes exactly according to plan. Things are going relatively smoothly overall today. Next, we're dealt ace-5 suited in middle position. We're always going to open our suited aces. I raised to 125. A sharp business guy named Varun calls in the hijack. We're heads up out of position. The flop comes ace-8-3 with 2 diamonds. We've got top pair but no kicker. We don't want this pot to get out of control. I checked the in-position opponent. The hijack isn't going to let us see a free turn. He bets 175. Varun mentioned that he wanted to make the vlog, so he could be bluffing in order to make that happen. It's more likely than not that we've got the best hand, and I'm okay with the price we're getting. I call. We're playing a little blind, but that's alright. We'll tread carefully unless we improve. The turn is the 10 of hearts. We gave up control of the pot on the flop. I checked the aggressor. If he bets, especially if he goes with a large sizing, we'll have a tough decision. Instead, the opponent checks back, indicating that he probably doesn't have us beat and almost definitely doesn't have 2 pair or better. The river's the 5 of spades, giving us a hidden 2 pair. We've determined that the opponent likely only has 1 pair at best. I put out a large overbet of 1,000 to put the opponent to the test. I'm always willing to do whatever I can to make these vlogs better. I've actually recently spent a ton of money developing a device that taps into the opponent's brains in order to listen to their inner monologue. Unfortunately, at the moment, I just have a prototype that only works when opponents are contemplating whether or not to call river bets. Luckily for us, we're in that exact situation right now. Let's listen in.
Reasonable wager. Not too expensive. We're gonna win this one, bro.
You guys are the first to get a preview of this amazing technology. It's just too bad that it sounds like Varun is going to fold, and he does. I like the opponent, so I let him know that he made the right decision.
Good fold, good fold. I don't know if that'll make it though.
In this one, we're dealt 4-3 diamonds in the cutoff. We're at the very bottom of our opening range from this position, but I raised to 150. The big blind calls. He's a good thinking professional. We're heads up in position. The flop comes king-9 deuce with 2 diamonds. We've got a flush draw with the backdoor straight draw. King-high boards are fairly good for us as the pre-flop aggressor, although the big blind will have plenty of kings in his range as well, along with a lot of suited combos. He checks. We're going to bet this at a high frequency. I wager 225 in an attempt to take this down with only 4 high. I'm okay getting a call or a fold. The big blind raises to 500. I call. Maybe he has a pair or a draw. Hopefully he just doesn't have a better flush draw than us. The turn is the queen of diamonds. We seemingly get there, or we could be in a whole lot of trouble. The big blind checks. If the opponent only has 1 pair, I'd like to instill some doubt in his mind about the strength of our hand. If he has us beat with a higher flush, I don't want this pot to get too big. I check back, mostly for deception and to see how the opponent wants to play the river. The dealer puts out the 4 of hearts. We make an unnecessary pair, but I like that it's not another diamond. The big blind makes a small bet of 400. If he went with a larger sizing, I might just call. Since he went with the small sizing, it really feels like a blocker bet, and he's trying to get to showdown cheaply. We know what he's attempting to do. It's time to disappoint him. I raise to 2,000. It's 5 times his bet size, and it should once again be extremely confusing. The big blind is trying to Sherlock Holmes this and put all the clues together, but the check back on the turn was way too misleading. He doesn't believe that we've got it. He makes the call for 1,600 more. We turn over the baby flush, baby flush. The big blind takes a long time to process that he lost. He likely called our raise very light on the river with a hand that really only wanted to pay $400 to get to showdown, but we upsold him to extract the max. Varun likes it.
Yeah. Sure.
Had nothing to do with it.
We're all having a great time hanging out and living the dream in Bobby's room. It's been a fun session. The only thing that I can think of that would make it better is pocket kings onto the gun. The only thing that might make it better from this point would be if the camera cooperated to get a clear shot of the Cowboys, but we're not able to get everything that we want. I kick things off with a raise to 125. When I raise some early positions, I tend to use a smaller amount, and then I'll raise to a slightly larger amount, occasionally from later positions, regardless of how strong the starting hand is. The player in middle position calls, the cutoff also calls. Our old nemesis is in the small blind, the one who stacked me last time I played high stakes. We've gotten the better of him today though, so maybe he's out for revenge. He 3-bets to 600. It's kind of a small sizing considering how many players have put money in so far, and the fact that the small blind will be playing from out of position. Kings is a great hand heads up. We want to get the middle position player and the cutoff out of there so that we can go mano y mano. I 4-bet to 2,000. This does the trick. The middle position player folds. The cutoff quickly folds as well. What didn't make the vlog is the fact that I just 3-bet this exact opponent light not long ago. It feels like I'm coming after him, and that assessment wouldn't necessarily be inaccurate, but we just happen to have a premium pocket pair at the moment. The small blind doesn't want to relinquish his hand just yet. He wants to go to war. Small blind calls for 1,400 more. We're heads up in position in what's already a big pot. The flop comes King 7-4 with 2 hearts. We've got top set and a 4-bet pot against someone that we have a unique dynamic with. He knows that I'm not happy about losing previously to him. He feels like today I've been bullying him. It's clear from the things that he said that he doesn't want to take it anymore, while I'm wondering how we should go about this in order to get all the $17,525 that we have in our stack into the pot by the end of the hand. Something insanely unexpected happens.
I'm on.
Call. Sure. Rather than check to the pre-flop aggressor on a king-high board, the opponent lead jams for 4 times the size of the pot while we have the stone-cold nuts. We're playing with almost $40,000 in the middle and have no idea what we're up against. The opponent could already be drawing close to dead. If we win, this will be the biggest pot that I've ever won at Bellagio, but we're running it twice. You guys have seen that running it twice hasn't helped me out at all in the past. It's actually cost me about $60,000 over the past few weeks. But I almost always leave it up to the opponent. He asked for 2 runouts. I agreed. I certainly don't want to get unlucky with only 1 runout while this much is at stake and lose everything. The first turn is the 8 of clubs. It actually isn't great if we're up against a hand like 6-5 suited, which just made a straight, but that seems somewhat unlikely in a 4-bet pot. The river is the 3 of clubs. At least the flush draw is missed. The king of hearts is unaccounted for, so it could be up against ace king of hearts or something like that. We probably have the first board locked up, though there's no way to know for sure since the opponent's cards are still face down. The second turn is the deuce of spades. It's as blank as it gets. We still have the absolute nuts on that board. The river is the 7 of diamonds. I don't like seeing it initially because it's red, but fortunately, it's not a heart. As long as the opponent doesn't have quad 7s, we probably scoop the entire $40,000 pot. It's time for showdown. The opponent 4x jammed king queen of hearts. Finally running it twice doesn't come back to haunt me. We win the biggest pot that I've ever won at Bellagio and inside Bobby's room. I said in the last episode that bluffing off our stack with ace queen was just a marketing expense. Having that dynamic leads us to winning way more from the same opponent the very next time we play with him in one of the most unorthodox hands I've ever seen. Still, it was a sweat since the opponent had tons of outs with 4 opportunities to drill one, but we hold in a massive spot. I actually like the player a lot. He's a brilliant person who's done well for himself outside of poker, but today, I get the best of him to win back all the money he was keeping warm for me, and quite a bit more. Never in my life have I flopped the nuts and had an opponent jam for over 4 times the size of the pot. The fact that it happened in Bobby's room while playing high stakes makes it even sweeter. Revenge mode is officially switched off. We get a count on my chips to confirm it's 17,525. The opponent pays with 4 5K flags, then some change is returned to him. After winning by far the largest pot of the session, we're up nearly $25,000 on the day. With my son about to be born, I couldn't be happier about the way everything's going right now. This is a special moment for me to be up this big. Last session, it was tough to make strong hands and get paid. It's all coming together today. Next, we're dealt pocket jiggities again. We're under the gun +1. I raised to 125. Varun calls on our left. The hijack calls as well. We're going 3 ways to the flop out of position. Comes 8 deuce deuce rainbow. There shouldn't be any deuces in the opponent's ranges, so the only hand that I'm concerned about losing to is pocket 8s and maybe pocket queens some tiny percentage of the time, but often we're going to have the commanding lead. I bet 400 to deny equity from hands containing 2 overs. Varun understands that today is not a day that we're going to be losing pots. He folds. The hijack is newer to the table and hasn't fully realized that today's our day. He calls, which he might do with pretty much any pocket pair. We're heads up out of position. The turn is the 7 of diamonds. Pocket 7s improves. It's certainly a hand that the hijack could have, but we're probably still best. The opponent is none other than Dan Blufferino, so I check to him for pot control and to give him a chance to do what he does. He doesn't disappoint. He bets 900. I'm not 100% sure that we've got the best hand, but the confidence level's high. We're never folding. I call, mostly hoping for another deuce. The river's the 9 of spades instead. An additional pocket pair lower than ours improves to steal the pot. I check. The hijack immediately checks back. We turn over our hand. It's the winner. The opponent quickly mucks his cards face down. I've played in this game a handful of times and felt like I was running slightly below average up until now. Today we're playing with easy mode switched on. It's nice when that's the case. With this win, our stack crossed over the $40,000 mark. A short time later, we pick up 7 deuce offsuit in the small blind. A player in middle position raises to 200. The cutoff calls. We 3-bet earlier with this hand. We're going to mix it up and just flat the 200 this time. Then play aggressively post-flop if we see an opening. The big blind calls for 150 more. We're going 4 ways to the flop out of position. Comes King Jack 5 rainbow. This is too dangerous of a situation to attempt a bluff with multiple opponents and a lot of high cards out there. If we see a bet, I'll just fold. For now, I check. Everyone else checks, so maybe no one has anything too good. The turn is a queen. After no one showing any real interest in winning the pot on the flop, the doors open back up for us to possibly attempt a steal. I bet 600. It should look strong. If this gets through, we'll win the 850 in the middle plus $200 from all 8 opponents at the table. In total, we're betting 600 to win 2450, meaning this bluff only has to work 1 in 5 times for it to be profitable. That's only 20% success rate threshold. Right now is that 1 time out of 5. Our read on the situation is correct. Within 4 seconds of the bet being out there, all 3 opponents fold. We show the 7 deuce to collect a $200 bonus from everyone. It's nice when the 7 deuce works out to collect the additional money. We're at a new high point in the session. I've already played longer than expected to avoid hitting and running, but it's time to rack up and celebrate the big win with my significant other. Played for 7 hours. That's the biggest win that I've ever had at Bellagio. I think maybe the biggest or second biggest pot that I've ever won. Dude just rips it for piles when we have the nuts. So that was amazing. I won $25,000. I played this game 4 times. The first time I played it, I broke even. Second time I won $13,000. And then the last time, a couple days ago, I lost $14,000. So this is just a huge game, and it's really my favorite game to play right now. So that was just an awesome day, and here with my girlfriend, Amber. Henry's making his debut, so just a couple of days away from Henry being born, and this is probably my last session, so very happy to have a big win right before a lot of family comes and we expand our own family.
É isso por hoje. Se gostaram, curtam e inscrevam-se. Ajuda o canal. Perguntas ou comentários? Avisem no. Ah, droga.
Oh shoot. Sorry guys, I forgot what channel I was doing this for. A lot of you guys may not know this, but after I record all the audio in English for this main channel, I then do everything in Portuguese for my Brazil channel. So I have a link down below in the description box for that if you're interested in checking out Brado in Brazil, where I'm speaking Portuguese. This episode was an awesome one. Really cool session right before my son was born. I actually end up playing one more session the next day that you'll see in an upcoming vlog. I'm just really busy right now. I've got a lot of things going on. We just took over Rounders in San Antonio, so that is going to be the newest addition to the lodge, which I'm really excited about. We're doing a meetup game there with me, Doug, and Andrew, July 26th. I have more information in the description box and in future episodes for that, but that's gonna be a blast. That's gonna be our first big event in San Antonio, so be sure to come out there if you can. And I'm just firing a ton of WSOP events, and then I have a WPT 25K coming up, so I can't wait for that. That's going to be perhaps my biggest buy-in of the entire year, and I'm putting a ton of updates every day on Instagram, so check me out at Brad01 if you're interested in seeing how I'm doing every day in the series. I made a couple final tables so far. I made 2 online, one for a bracelet event and then one for a ring event, and I'm firing a lot on WPT Global as well. So sign up to Global using that bonus code BRAD for some extra perks. All right guys, hope you're all doing well, hope you're staying safe, good luck at the tables, and if you see me around, feel free to say hi. All right, bye.